Have you ever looked up at a massive city skyline and just wondered who actually owns all of this? Well, today we are unpacking a literal $1.1 billion structural shift happening right above our heads. We're going to look closely at the strategy behind Residential REIT's latest market maneuvers. Because these massive acquisitions, they're honestly a perfect window into the future of global urban real estate. So let's jump right into the explainer. $1.1 billion. I mean, just let that number sink in for a second. As of June 2026, that is the staggering, mind-boggling scale of capital being deployed by the Residential REIT. And look, this isn't just some casual portfolio adjustment, no way. It's a massive, highly deliberate maneuver aimed squarely at dominating a very specific sector of the market. To really grasp the sheer gravity of a billion-dollar strategy, we have to look exactly at where this money is landing, because honestly, it tells us everything we need to know about the current property cycle. Okay, let's dive into this. On May 28th and June 5th of 2026, Residential executed dual acquisitions in arguably one of the most fiercely competitive property markets on the planet, New York City. We are talking about 7 Days Street, which is situated right in the economic engine of Lower Manhattan, and the Ivy Tower development spanning West 42nd and 43rd Streets, right in the heart of Midtown. Now, these aren't just your run-of-the-mill buildings. These are high-value, absolute premium luxury residential assets sitting in extremely high-demand urban rental corridors. But seeing these two massive purchases naturally brings up a pretty fundamental question about how these mega investors actually operate. Think about it. Why buy existing assets instead of just building new ones? If you have over $1 billion burning a hole in your pocket, why not buy up some prime land and design the next iconic skyscraper completely from scratch? Why are institutional giants like Residential spending vast fortunes to acquire buildings that are already standing, already occupied, and already operating? It kind of seems counterintuitive, right? Especially if you think about real estate purely as a development game. But here's the thing. Institutional capital isn't playing a development game right now. They're playing a scale and stability game. And the answer to that big question lies in exactly what kind of assets they are buying up. They're zeroing in on what's called Class A residential assets. Now, in the real estate world, Class A is the absolute pinnacle of the market, the best of the best. We're talking premium, ultra-high quality buildings in prime locations. But the really crucial elements to focus on here are the words supply-constrained districts and immediate stable income. By scooping up 7 Days Street and Ivy Tower, Residential is essentially locking in guaranteed immediate cash flow. There's no waiting around for 5 years for permits, construction delays, or lease-ups. The second the ink dries on that contract, these properties are literally putting money into the REIT's operating base.
The strategic logic behind this is, well, it's pretty bulletproof. They want immediate income generation in supply-constrained districts. Since these are high-demand rental corridors with very limited new construction in the pipeline, you get this incredibly sustained, resilient rental demand. I mean, there simply aren't enough new luxury buildings going up to house all the people who want to live in these prime spots. And that exact supply bottleneck, that's what fundamentally protects and grows the value of the assets Residential just bought. It's a real game changer for their portfolio.
Now, what's really interesting about this whole picture is that these massive moves in New York, they aren't just happening in a vacuum. Not at all. They represent a massive global institutional trend of densification and consolidation that's happening all over the world. So we really have to ask ourselves, what does this single $1.1 billion strategy tell us about the broader global property market? Well, the data identifies 3 massive structural signals right now. We've got capital concentration, a very clear preference for acquisition over development, and the rise of defensive assets. Make no mistake, these are the exact trends driving the decisions in corporate boardrooms right this second. So let's walk through exactly how this global chessboard is being played out. Okay, signal 1, capital continues to heavily concentrate in major global cities. Listen, despite all the macroeconomic uncertainty out there, no matter what inflation is doing or where interest rates are heading, institutional money is just pouring into gateway cities. The data specifically calls out major markets like New York, London, and Toronto. And why is that? It's because the structural rental demand in these massive economic hubs remains incredibly strong. Investors want their capital parked in high-density environments where the fundamental basic human need for housing provides a solid floor against any economic volatility. Simply put, the big money is crowding into the biggest cities. Which brings us to signal 2. So the crucial point is, targeted acquisitions provide immediate cash flow. Organic development, on the other hand, that comes with years of waiting, totally unpredictable construction costs, and let's face it, absolute regulatory nightmares. REITs are actively, aggressively pursuing rapid scale, and the safest, most efficient way to get that scale is by buying what already exists and is already working. They are more than happy to trade the potential higher profit margins of ground-up development for the immediate liquidity and absolute certainty of an existing premium asset. And that leads us directly into signal 3. Urban multifamily housing is rapidly emerging as a core defensive asset class. Now, a defensive asset is essentially a financial fortress. It's an investment that maintains a highly resilient cash flow profile, pretty much regardless of what the broader economy is doing. Because at the end of the day, people always need a place to live, right? This resilience is driven by undeniable demographic pressure, nonstop urban migration, and those constrained supply pipelines we talked about earlier. Institutional portfolios are basically loading up on these specific properties so they can weather any unpredictable economic storms. And this brilliantly illustrates our broader market outlook. We are currently witnessing an ongoing, massive re-rating of prime residential assets within these institutional portfolios. Since these assets are proving to be such incredibly reliable, defensive generators of cash flow in really constrained markets, institutions are literally recalculating what they are actually worth. They're assigning way higher intrinsic values to these properties, and that, in turn, makes it super easy to drop $1.1 billion to acquire them. As these giant trusts fiercely compete for scale and efficiency, you're going to see transaction activity remain heavily concentrated in these high liquidity urban corridors, especially across North America. So, pulling all of this source material together, what exactly does the future property cycle look like? Well, according to the data, it's defined by 3 main pillars. First up, capital aggregation. The biggest players in the game are pooling immense, mind-blowing amounts of wealth to just buy up the market. Second, it's totally driven by scale and operational efficiency. The larger the portfolio, the cheaper it is to operate on a per unit basis, which makes scale a massive competitive advantage. And third, it is intensely focused on geographic concentration. They aren't just buying everywhere. They're buying very strategically in highly contested global gateway cities. Which brings us to a really critical final thought I want to leave you with today. We've seen exactly how Geo-Residential REIT's big moves in New York reflect this massive global shift towards highly concentrated institutional ownership. So as capital aggregation completely defines this future property cycle, and as these massive trusts buy up the limited supply of premium housing just for operational efficiency, who really owns the global city? It's a genuinely fascinating structural shift, and it's one that will undoubtedly redefine urban living for decades to come. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, I highly encourage you to keep a close eye on your own city skyline.